We're here to talk about your short film, 1111. So,
Yeah.
first of all, congratulations on the movie. I thought it was refreshing. It was fun at the same time while having a message behind it. So I'm just curious. Like, it tells the story of a 16-year-old Pakistani girl. She's trying to get under the eye of a young boy. So, how much of yourself did you put in that story?
Um, I definitely, I think, borrowed a lot of my own life experience. But I think like all the characters and everything that happens to them is sort of like an amalgamation of all these different people. Like the Jeff character is like every boy I ever had a crush on combined, and like a little bit of like just like the actor himself, and what he was bringing to the role and like something completely different. And I think it's like the same for every character and every experience that's in the movie. It's not like everything happened to me exactly that way. I never turned white. I think a lot of the experiences have some kernel of truth to their foundation.
Yeah, because I mean, the coming of age high school kind of like John Hughes influences are pretty strong in this one. So was that always what you were aiming for when you did the short? Because, like I said, it's telling a message while also being funny. So I'm curious, how did this idea came to life?
Yeah, so the first draft I ever wrote of the feature film was just like a vomit draft of my experience in middle school. So in seventh grade, it was really like younger and way more specific to that time period. And then I think I had gone through an experience in middle school where I had been friends with like the most popular girl in school. Actually, this was in sixth grade. And I thought we were friends, but there were always just like weird things happening that made me feel like maybe we aren't friends or I don't know what's going on here. It was really confusing. And at the end of the school year, she like took my yearbook and she vandalized it with like
Ah.
just like ruined the whole yearbook. And I had been on the yearbook staff, so I had helped make the yearbook. And I was just like, what? And it was so like bizarre and confusing. And I remember it was her and her other friend, and they just like it was like they were high off of sugar or something, and they just like drew all these like stick figure drawings of like sex positions. I don't even know what. It was just so weird. It was so weird. There was so much weird stuff in there. And I was just like, what? But I was like, okay, obviously we're like not friends anymore and this is like awful and I kind of hate you now. So that was like the basis of where this whole thing started. And as I kept writing, draft after draft, I think I kind of thought we I feel like we haven't had like a amazing teen girl sort of coming of age movie like the ones I grew up on, like Mean Girls or Angus Songs and Perfect Song Gang or any of those. Um, and so I was trying to think of like what could make this not just kind of like a depressing slice of life movie where like you just like experience terrible microaggressions or whatever else, or what could make it more marketable and more exciting and more entertaining. And then I think I just kind of naturally thought like what would have made this experience like more interesting like for me at that age. And I just think I realized that I could have never been part of that group unless I was not myself
Hmm.
and unless I was and it would have been a lot easier to be a part of that group had I not been Pakistani.
Hmm.
Because the way I'm Pakistani, the way I'm so proud and vocal about my culture, it was just impossible to be that and be a part of that friend group. And so I was like, whoa, what if she like turns white? And I had never seen that other than I guess white chicks, and that's a very different story. So I think that's kind of like the brief journey of how I got there.
Well, you mentioned like the fact that people in high school they're so mean, and even the kids sometimes they can be so mean. So, I mean, was it kind of like therapeutic in some way, and having that scene where they all throw the toilet paper, just kind of like full circle moment for you?
You know, we did go TPing a lot. I don't know if you did that as a kid. So I
And actually not, but I did some bad stuff, but I did not do
thought
the TP.
that. What was
No.
the thing in your school?
Well, let's move forward to no,
Okay.
no, no. Well, I did some bad things like paintball and stuff on houses,
Oh
so
my
throwing
God.
eggs, we did that. So let's not
We
go
had
too
egging
much.
too. Yeah, we had egging was like the extreme thing you do. But yeah, we actually went TPing a lot and I definitely did TP a crush of mine, like after things didn't work out. So I experienced that in real life, and I had also never seen TPing in a high school movie. So I was like, we have to put that in there. It's such an iconic part of life, and I don't know if kids are doing that anymore. But I definitely
I would be surprised. I feel like it's a different generation. They're kind of boring these days. Like I mean,
I think they're too scared. They're probably too
yeah.
scared that they're like on camera and they're gonna get caught, you know?
That's actually true. Yeah, that's something I
Yeah.
did not thought of. But you mentioned, like, I want to talk also about the color management. The pink is very predominant in your film. So the TP is actually pink. There's also something about like the breast cancer thing. Was that intentional? What was your approach with that?
Yeah, that was my excuse to sort of be able to use pink toilet paper. And just I have like a very specific color scheme, and each
Yeah.
color denotes a very specific part of the story. So, that was an excuse to use pink toilet paper, and we really did do a lot of like cancer awareness stuff in school. We had like a walk for life. We were always raising money for cancer stuff. So I was like, this is perfect. Like, maybe Jeff's family, they're really affluent. Like they donated a lot to the cancer stuff, and they got all this like breast cancer branded toilet paper in return. So I thought it worked well.
Yeah, because we're talking about the art direction, but also in terms of production design, if I'm not mistaken, you kind of have like a background doing production design. Yeah, so I feel like it's right from the start. It's very colorful with kind of like this scrapbooky montage. So was it important for you to like to be this short to be like vibrant and have this level of energy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I got to do way more stylistic stuff, but because it's a proof of concept and we had a very
Yeah.
limited budget, I had to like tone all that down. So I tried to do the most with what we had. But yeah, it was really, really important for me. I wanted it to, like, with the intro and that kind of scrapbooky, like hand animated intro, I wanted to evoke like the feeling of a teenage girl's diary. And you've kind of like entered her brain and her world. And a lot of the stuff that's in there was taken from my real diaries and my real
Really?
drawings. Yeah, so I made my motion graphics person. His name is Kaz. He's in Belgium. He's like the coolest guy. But I was like, Kaz, you need to make it super girly. Like his real style is kind of grunge. And so I literally sent him like scanned pages of my diary, and I was like, please don't judge me for the things I've written. But I have very extensive diaries from like third grade onwards, so those were really helpful. And then I think the color scheme, because of my production design background and just my most like influential class during my master's at USC in film, we talked a lot about how you can sort of like map out the six visual components according to story structure, and I feel like color is like the one that people I think notice the most. So I kind of established like a rule that blue represents the white world and pink represents like the brown ethnic world. And then her color in that world is purple, which is a mix of those two colors, but also in the middle. So that I tried to carry that kind of color scheme throughout the film. And even in the background that you have, like you can see Jasmine,
Yeah.
she's half. So she has her pink and her blue, and everyone has like some version of that.
Yeah, because I mean, the short film, you mentioned your scrapbook, and it's funny that you sent like your own thing. Because I'm actually surprised that it's a guy who made this because, like you said, it's so girly in some ways. Also, the short film is set in 2009, so I'm guessing this is pretty much when you graduated from high school. I graduated in like '09 and 2010. So, how do you recreate that time period? Do you just make like a deep dive into your memories? I guess it kind of answers the question by itself. Yeah.
Yeah, so I graduated a little bit later, and actually in the
Okay.
future I'm setting it to 2011. So the wish happens on November 11th, 2011. So it's all
Right.
11, 11, 11, 11, 11, and that's like why the magic sort of happens. But I kid you not, I have been like living in the past for so long. I have read all my diaries. I've like scanned the good stuff. I have like a folder. I have like even digitize them, like so I can borrow stuff from my diaries. I have gone through all my yearbooks from high school. I have stalked everybody's Facebook. Like I have scrolled all the way back to like 2007. It's so creepy, but I have like screenshots of things that I'm sure people do not want me to have screenshots of. I've like looked through all the YouTube videos that people used to make. I've interviewed tons of friends. I even have like revisited the places that I kind of grew up that evoke those feelings. So I can like feel those feelings more strongly and then like write from that place. I listen to all the music that I used to listen to back then, like over and over again, to the point where like it loses its potency. So you have to like find new ways to access that feeling. So I'm even just right before this, I've been rewriting and I was just looking through like another person's Facebook, and it puts you in a really weird mental space to be like constantly revisiting how we used to be in high school and stuff, because it really feels like, you know, an alternate life or something after you know, it's been so long.
Yeah, well, because you talk about the music, I wanted to ask you about the music selection because I'm thinking just about like the presentation she does first, and it's very cultural. You can feel your influence into that. So, how did you pick your song for the film?
Yeah, so I had an amazing composer named Demir who is like a rock star from Bangladesh, and he actually has like an amazing new song out, and I feel so lucky that he was down to.
Well, let's put the plug. What's the name of the song? We'll just put it in the video.
It's in Bangla, so let me see if I can pronounce it
Yeah.
correctly. Um, okay, it's called Kancha,
Okay.
which I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the artist is Demir with a
Okay.
D, and he has a lot of really good music in English and in Bangla. Um, but yeah, he's really young, and he kind of like knew all my references, like everything from the indie music to you know, of that time, to like PC music, hyper pop music that's kind of like referencing some of the things from that time, but is like a modern twist on those things and feels really like futuristic in a lot of ways. And of course he's brown, so I felt like, you know, he also understood all of my I grew up on classical Indian or South Asian music, so
Mhm.
he also understood like all of those classical instruments and you know, the different types of classical music. So he did an amazing job composing for me, and I had very specific references of like, I have a playlist that I've been creating for years. And then I have some of my best friends are in this amazing band called Tetherball. Actually, my editor is also in the band.
Okay.
It is Julian, and his sister Bernie is the lead singer, and our friend Miller is in the band too. And lucky enough for me, they like had put out an album, and Bernie just had this song which was like about making a wish, and I was like, okay, this is perfect. Like, Bernie, please let me use this, and she
Yeah.
was kind enough to let me use it.
Yeah, and you also talked about the you know, November 11 at 11:11. I don't want to say I'm superstitious, but I do feel like sometimes there's a meaning behind the numbers. So I'm curious how you feel about like 11:11 being the title of your film, and does it have a significance like for you personally?
Well, I did as a young girl like psychotically make wishes. 11. It was like it was kind of like mental illness vibes, you know, like we were like 11:11, like like we could not stop, and it was kind of like a tick at a point. But now I think it's weird because ever since I've made the film, I like keep seeing 11:11 everywhere. And I'm
Mhm.
like, is this just like because I'm tuned in and just seeing it everywhere now? But like literally, even the time, like every single time I like happen to look at the clock, it's 11:11, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I do kind of feel like the universe like gives you signs in different ways. So some now I think when I see that, it kind of does make me feel a little like, ooh, I should. It motivates me to keep going in a weird way. But
I I feel like I'm usually like pretty down to earth and rational, but there's something about numbers that sometimes it's just weird, right? It's
yeah, it's
just
like,
weird.
why am I suddenly like seeing it everywhere? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but either way, I think if it helps you like make a positive kind of like effect in your
Mhm.
life, then, like why not, you know?
Yeah, and there's something also about the film, like there's a lot being said about being able to accept yourself and who you are. And there's a term in the film which kind of like express that perfectly is race traitor. Is that something you experience yourself a little bit? You kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm curious, like, well, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, obviously when she like lists all the different types of like categories that she's put the brown people in, I know it comes off like very judgmental, but I think a part of that is, well, first of all, we are all very judgmental when we're young, so I think it's honest. But I think I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from Pakistan like she did in elementary school. And I think when you're an immigrant, you're like hyper vigilant and you're constantly noticing everything about everyone because absolutely nothing makes sense when you immigrate. And you're like, wait, like you keep putting people into categories and you're like, am I like them? Am I like them? Like what's cool? What's not cool? Like it's kind of like a survival coping mechanism thing you have to do.
Mhm.
And I just always felt that my relationship with my culture and my religion, because I was an immigrant, and I think because I was very privileged in Pakistan, was very different than, the first generation's kids I'd meet that had never gone back to the country their parents were from. Um, and I just noticed very quickly that there was this kind of person who would be like in the popular group, and the way they talked about their race was, they didn't talk about it, and if they did talk about it, it was making fun of it, and also like their names were always easy to pronounce, unlike mine, and their parents let them wear whatever the popular kids were wearing, and they weren't policed in that way, or even like drinking and partying, like somehow their parents let them do that stuff. And I feel like not just immigrant parents, but just a lot of parents would not let their kids do that kind of stuff. So, and I think popularity is kind of about like at that age about growing up a little quickly, and doing those things faster than other people. So I definitely that is I still feel like there's so many people who, are even in the White House and and heading countries who are race traders or in the African American tradition. I think that's the Uncle Tom, who
Yeah, yeah. No,
wants to.
I totally agree with that. And there's also something that can be applied to kind of like any race or gender is trying to fit in. And especially in high school, it's something that's even more like, yeah, we have like this pressure in high school and you want to fit into a clique or you want like to fit into a gang. So I guess that's why you wanted to tell that story, right?
Yeah, and I think the especially honestly when I started it was in middle school, and I have never felt like a stronger force on earth to like
Mhm.
conform than in middle school. It's like you just did not want to be different. Like you had to follow all the trends, and like you had to get all the things, all the objects you were like carrying meant so much for some reason. Um and I don't know what puberty does to your brain, but it really is such a strong force. And I just felt like going through that, I think I was kind of like a rebellious kid from a very young age. And I think that's why I pursued the arts my whole life. But I just always felt like the people who were the coolest were the people who were doing their own thing. And I always felt that, like, why am I living in this like context of middle school or high school where like that's not valued, and instead what's valued is this like absurd conformity that like why did what even made these kids popular, like who decided that these kids are popular, uh,
Mhm.
so I definitely think I think the message I really want to get across with this film is like whatever makes you different, like that's your superpower, that's what makes you cool, and you should just really own that. And I think it's a gift to the world, and it's kind of like the thing that makes America so wonderful and so great, in my opinion, is like the diversity that I've experienced here my whole life, and the different kinds of people who have shaped who I am,
Mhm. Well, I'm super glad you end up being this rebellious kid because that's kind of like why you fell into art and you're actually talented. I also want to talk a little bit about your journey into filmmaking, specifically about your relationship with Proof of Concept. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is kind of like a comedy with Greta Gerwig, Chloe Zhao, and Lilly Wachowski. So, how did it came to life? Like, how did you manage to have your movie selecting by them?
Yeah, I guess I got lucky. But basically, Cate Blanchett, Coco Francini, and Dr. Stacy L. Smith, they all met at Cannes Film Festival a few years ago, and made a friendship. And then afterwards, when they met again at Cannes, they decided to sort of put this program together to advance female and non-binary filmmakers forward. Um, Kate and Coco are work together for Dìdi Films. That's their production company, and then
Mhm.
Dr. Smith heads the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, which actually just released a really amazing report on gender parity and minority representation, and like how there's been absolutely no improvement since
Mhm.
2007. Um, in that representation in film. But anyways, they put this program together. They got funding from Netflix. All their different companies supported it, and then in the selection committee, they got like all these badass women to read. You know, I guess the finalists or I'm not exactly sure how many applications they read, but I think it was the finalists, and they got everyone from Greta Gerwig to Lilly Wachowski, Emma Corrin, and Chloe Zhao, everyone. And I submitted like a whole application. The good thing, I think, the thing that maybe helped put me forward is that I have been like working on this film forever. So I had like a feature script, I had a script for the proof of concept, like a shorter scene or version, and I had like a whole deck. I have really worked on building my community in film. And, you know, after my last film, I found some really great collaborators, and I knew like all the different positions, who I wanted. I even had some casting options. So I think they could see that, you know, this isn't just like a dream of a person. This is something that this person is really passionate about making. Um, but yeah, and I don't know. I think it's a fun movie, and I think a lot of people will relate to it, you know, so I think they probably saw that as well.
Yeah, because when I talk to filmmakers who are doing shorts, I always ask the question like, "What's next?" Because some of them they want to turn this into a full feature film, some of them want to move on and do something else. What's on your mind? What's next for Manure?
Yeah, so I have always wanted to make this as my first feature, and that's been like the consistent goal. And that was kind of the goal with this program. I was like, okay, this will really help, you know, take this forward. So now we're on the festival circuit with 1111, and we premiered at HollyShorts. We got nominated for an award there. And we have a few more really exciting festivals coming up. And I'm just trying to meet more people, find, you know, good partners for the feature. We have a few people interested who are amazing partners. And then I'm just working on the screenplay. I just need to like, I think there's such a gap that you try and, you know, fill as a writer, where there's this thing that's this idea in your head, and there's like where you're at and the distance that you need to go to get it to that place. So I'm just like every draft that I write, I'm just figuring out, you know, new things about the concept. And right now I just figured out something that makes a lot of sense for the second act and like completely changes the story. So I'm just trying to get the script in order and make the film. My goal is to shoot it next summer. We'll see if that happens. I know it's
Yes. Fingers crossed. And I'm sorry, I can't believe I didn't talk about the casting process, but how did you find Tara? Because did you find a little bit of yourself in her when you were doing the casting process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did an open call. And I also I was so creepy, and I went to all my local high schools where I grew up, and I went to their theater drama shows, and I was like, hey kids, want to go to Hollywood? You know, like that was like that creepy person. But I basically, the thing that helped was that A, I'm like a young woman, and B, I'm like from the area. So I was like, no, I grew up here, and like I'm making this film.
I would have not have been able to do that. So you have that. You were
I
able.
know. I was like, okay, this is like one privilege to being a woman for once. But I like became friends with so many moms who were like moms of these kids. But I found a few of my actors that way. And there were lots of really serendipitous things with that. But Tara actually was from the open call, and she's like a friend of a friend, and obviously an amazing actress. And I think what I saw in Tara was that thing of like, it's not that she had to necessarily like be like me. But what I was looking for the character was somebody who was just different, you know, somebody who was just doing their own thing, and they like were the kind of person who, you know, they don't dress the way other people dress, they don't look the way other people look, and the things they find cool are just like a taste that they've developed themselves, you know. So I really sensed that in her, and I felt like she had that quality, that very specific quality.
Yeah, no, that she was really good, and also everyone in the cast, like you mentioned, Jeffrey, who represent all the young boys you met during high school, and that was a great choice. I also want to ask you a little bit about the influence in the film, but you kind of answered that early on with like Mean Girls. Is there another one you could like add to this?
Yeah, there's so many influences. I think Mean Girls is like the most iconic and, you know, famous one. But another film that has a really strong hold on me is Submarine by Richard Ayoade. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It's great. It's really
I
good. Yeah.
love that film. I love that film. I love how that character is like the main character is kind of like a dick. Excuse my
It is actually. Yeah.
right, but it's so relatable because like who isn't that way when they're young? And it's very difficult to like strike that balance where it's not like he's unlikable, but it's just very honest. And I just love how like the choices, like the visual choices and the stylization is like very high and extreme, but the visual choices are very limited, even like in terms of their color palette and everything. So I really like that film. These days, I just watched Parthenope by Paolo Sorrentini. I don't know how I felt about the film, but like the stylization, the cinematography, the way like Italy is sort of depicted, that's and the way like glamorousness is sort of shown, that's a big influence on the feature, especially because the town that this is all based on, Palos Verdes, is modeled after southern Italy, so it looks very similar to southern Italy in a lot of ways. So yeah, those are some of my inspirations. And Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging. I watched that when I was a teen, and I was like, a Robbie. I mean, Aaron Taylor Johnson is still, I think, the heartthrob.
Oh, and he's getting better with age, like, aging like a fine wine.
I know, like, come on, give us a break. He's like a family man. I'm like, something has to be wrong with him, but
hopefully he's gonna be the next James Bond. We'll see. But thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take more of your time. I feel like I would have been chatting for hours if that was the case. But I really love your film. I'm looking forward to see what you do next, even if it's going to another project or doing this as a full feature film. I wish you all the best, and I'll keep you on my radar.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your questions.
By the way, your tattoo are great. I love your hand tattoo. Amazing.
Always repping.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.